Podcast Azaadi for so yeah, today I'm going to be reviewing or utilizing a video by a channel called Let's Talk Religion. It's a pretty cool channel. I've been following it for ages. It just talks about like various ideas within religions, and not at a surface level. It goes into good depth. He recently released a video on the concept of pantheism, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity actually, because the way he explains it in terms of like definitions and how these definitions have evolved over time, I thought it was quite good actually to relate that to a similar phenomenon we sort of see with terms like libertarianism in particular, especially my usage of it. So hopefully by going through some of this video, I can explain a point I'm trying to make through this. So I'll play some of it first.
Of pantheism is kind of hidden right in the name. It's based on the Greek, where pan means all and theos means God. So pantheism, in a literal sense, means something like the teaching where God is all. It's also important to discuss that pantheism is a term and meaning that is strongly connected with other and sometimes very similar terms and concepts. For example, in discussions on pantheism, another very similar term is often brought up, panentheism. What this is essentially a slight modification of pantheism. Rather than that pan is theos, all is God, here pan is en theos, in theos. So the world is in God, but God in God's totality transcends or is more than the world. God isn't limited to simply being the totality of the universe.
Yeah, and this pantheism versus panentheism sort of debate is something I've had amongst friends as well. I mean, it's an interesting debate. I'm personally on the side that it's probably pantheism is what I understand Sikhi is trying to get at. But I suppose it just comes down to your definition of what constitutes like creation in a sense, right? Like what are you sort of defining as existence that God is a manifest within or manifest as? So if you believe the universe is finite and there's an outside of the universe, then as a panentheist, you'd basically say, okay, well, God's both inside the universe and outside of it. But if you believe that the universe is like infinite and there is nothing, and like the word universe itself is synonymous with the word existence, then yeah, there's no room conceptually for there to be an outside of the universe, if that makes sense. At which point you'd be essentially a pantheist. But I think this is just mostly semantics, really. Both terms kind of do the trick, I suppose. But obviously, if anyone has any arguments either way to convince me otherwise, feel free to let me know in the comment sections or reach out. I'll be interested to hear more on this debate in particular.
There are also other related terms that often come up, monism, panpsychism, non-dualism, and so on, but which all have their distinct uses and meanings, and some of them will reappear in this discussion.
Yeah, the term I usually default to is non-dualism. I think it's the most, at least from my understanding of these terms, I think it's the one that kind of like gets to the point quite quickly. And obviously it would translate to advait, like not to or not the word, right? So that's the term I tend to use when I describe Sikhi's conception of God. When I talk about Ikwan God, I describe it as like a non-dual philosophy or a philosophy of non-dualism. And panpsychism is actually something that's become quite popular over the last couple of years that I've noticed and even learned about in the first place. It's a Western approach to the problem of consciousness or consciousness studies in general. There is a really cool YouTube channel I used to watch. I'm not sure if they still upload videos anymore, but the guy used to do a series of really good video essays on the topics of panpsychism and interviews with like top scientists and stuff in the field of panpsychism. I'll probably link that in the description or in the comment section because I think it's a really cool channel to explore. So do remind me if I forget.
Another problem with the term pantheism is that it has almost exclusively been used as a derogatory term. It's been used by people to criticize others by calling them pantheists, by accusing them of pantheism, whereas very few people in history, if anyone, actually self-identified as a pantheist until quite recently in history. And today we have a lot of people that do self-identify as pantheists, but this was not the case historically. So this is also important to remember, that this is a term used by those critical of others to accuse those others of being pantheist for their doctrines, and what people counted as being pantheists in that sense varied dramatically from person to person.
Yeah, so essentially, it's a really interesting point he's made here about how pantheism used to be a kind of like a slur or a cuss term, but nowadays people would readily self-identify as pantheists, and I include myself in this video, right? But it's an interesting thing to note because it just shows how the usage of terms evolves over time and the relationships people have with those terms. And this now applies to the kind of topic that I want to cover in this video. No one has an issue if you say Sikhi is pantheistic, but they would have one if you say Sikhi is libertarian.
Just because the term itself didn't exist until this point, and therefore that it is deeply connected to the specifically modern European Western intellectual environment. Still, that doesn't mean that what is meant by the term in a broad sense can't be found in other regions and times in history.
So as he explained in the video, pantheism as a concept, although it wasn't used until much later, that conceptually it has existed throughout history and throughout many cultures, not just this Western one.
When we look at the polytheistic religion of ancient Egypt, for example, especially in the later Ramesside period, we find expressions that certainly sound pantheistic, where God, or sometimes the gods in plural, are directly identified with natural phenomena and the cosmos. For example, quote, "You are the sky, you are the earth, you are the netherworld, you are the water, you are the air between them." Greek religion and philosophy, we find some of the most famous proponents of pantheism. Even someone like Thales famously stated that, quote, "all things are full of gods."
So it's really cool to see when you look at these examples he gives of ancient Egypt, and you got plenty of examples from Eastern traditions, where the term pantheism, although not used, the concept itself was very much in existence. And in a very similar way, so is libertarianism. And the way to reveal this is by studying the definition of libertarianism. So if we go to something like the Oxford Research Encyclopedia, we can read like a summary on what libertarian is. It's a very good summary actually, and I'll read it out. It says, libertarianism is a theory in political philosophy that strongly values individual freedom and is skeptical about the justified scope of government in our lives. Libertarians see individuals as sovereign, as people who have a right to control their bodies and work, who are free to decide how to interact with willing others, and who cannot be forced to do things against their will without very strong justification. And another definition, or another explanation, we can look at the Encyclopedia Britannica. So libertarianism, a political philosophy that takes individual liberty to be the primary political value. And then it goes on to explain the kind of origins of it with like liberalism, classical liberalism, etc., and thinkers like John Locke to Adam Smith, essentially just showing the origins of where this sort of like concept, or how the terminology around the word libertarianism has come into existence, or into the political consciousness of thinkers in the West. But again, fundamentally, the concept of freedom and liberty predates all of these things. So for me personally, I view Sikhi, or I can summarize Sikhi in one line, as essentially as the pursuit for spiritual and political liberty. Hence why I'm obsessed with the concept of Azadi for this reason, and it's why it resonates so deeply with libertarians and libertarian thought so much, because that is the Western approach to liberty, or Azadi. Liberty and Azadi are synonymous terms. They mean the same thing. The libertarians, or these Western libertarians, haven't invented freedom or liberty. What they've done is provide a new linguistic framework in which to explore and share the ideas related to the concept of freedom, and that is an important thing to note. Now, the same way how in this video he goes through various examples throughout world history that pertain to pantheism long before the term even existed. So when I talk about things like the non-aggression principle and use examples from Sikh Itihas to push it, I'm doing so in very much the same sense. When Guru Tegh Bahadur stood up to the Mughal state and contested its tyranny by defending the rights for religious freedoms of even those of a different tradition, this can be seen as an expression of libertarianism. Now, the major issue we as Sikhs have today is that we are far, far too insular. What we should be doing is seeking out modern-day libertarians who are forwarding the cause of liberty and contributing to that through a Sikh perspective. The same thing we should be doing in fields of study where non-dualism is taken seriously, Buddhists and monks from the Advaita Vedanta tradition are doing this right now with Western panpsychists at world-class institutions. That's something that we Sikhs should be doing as well. We should be contributing to those discussions and providing linguistic frameworks and ways to understand those concepts, where Western institutions and Western linguistic frameworks are failing to find terminology accurate to describe the phenomena they're studying. We haven't contributed to this field. Now the Buddhists have come in and the Advaita Vedanta guys have come in, and they're providing the perspectives and ways to understand consciousness and all of this kind of stuff. There's no reason why we Sikhs couldn't do that, but again, we're too insular. But what the Buddhists and the Advaita Vedanta guys don't have, that Sikhs do have, is a comprehensive political dimension, which makes Sikh quite unique. We have a Midi and a Bidi philosophy. And this makes us in a good position where we can relate deep spiritual concepts that the Buddhists and the Advaita Vedanta guys would appreciate, but we can also relate it to worldly things, to temporal affairs, to political philosophy. And that's where I think Sikhs find this really good sweet spot to combine both the spiritual dimensions and the political dimensions. And this is why I think Sikhs have something to add when it comes to the conversation around libertarianism in the modern age. So we as a tradition, as Sikhs, have been libertarians far before the West even formalized these ideas and labeled it as libertarianism. We have so many martyrs for this cause who have every right to get involved, inherit and innovate on libertarianism and how it's advanced today. Hence the point of Azadism, which in many respects you could label as libertarianism with Sikh characteristics. So this is why I tend to roll my eyes when people try to dismiss Azadism as just Sikh libertarianism. It's not a slur. Azadism literally translates to libertyism or libertarianism. Azadi means liberty. So in the West, using Western languages, Western linguistic frameworks, we're going to label the traditions and the studies of liberty as something ism, right? So libertyism. That's what we get the term libertarianism from, or liberalism as well. But Azadism is just basically using a Indo-Persian term to describe the same phenomena, but study it from a Sikh perspective. Hence the point of this whole terminology of using Azadism. Hence what I tried to say and target Sikhs by saying, look, these are the forefront of liberty-related studies, and we, in theory, being a liberty-oriented people or a liberty-loving people, we should be also at the forefront of this. We should be contributing to these Vichaars, even though there are Western Vichaars now and Western dominates it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't contribute to it because it's Western. I mean, this whole attitude of being against something purely on the basis that it's Western is completely farcical. I don't believe that's the approach the Gurus themselves would have used at all. I mean, they themselves would have collected wisdom from wherever they could get it. They're not, but the world is open to philosophers and stuff from all sorts types of backgrounds. If the Guru was sort of like against anything Western on the sole basis that it's Western, then they would have used a European doctor to treat Guru Gobind Singh Maharaj's wounds. So this attitude of being anti-Western just because it's Western is a ridiculous thing, and it's also a divisive thing where we Sikhs should be less isolationist and start becoming more valuable and more relevant by contributing meaningfully in the modern day areas of Vichaar. And also dismissing things on these kind of basis is by saying, oh, Azadism's just Sikh libertarianism. It's like dismissing Sikhi by saying, oh, that's just Punjabi non-dualism. Like, yeah, it is in some ways, but there's a lot of nuance to that is missed out by doing something like that, by looking at things that way. And in that nuance, you also have the value by exploring those ideas and subsequently implementing those ideas. But if you just dismiss something on the face of it because, oh, it sounds kind of roughly like that, and you categorize it and label it in a weird way, then yeah, you're doing yourself a disservice by doing that. Now, I'm not pushing this Azadism stuff or Sikhi's pursuit of political liberty and spiritual liberty, or mukti, as the only interpretation, the only way to look at Sikhi. It's just the one that I use, that I've developed over time, and that I found useful and fruitful for myself. And I share it because I like to have it debated and to discuss it. And if you can find holes in my ideas and find cracks, then please do. I mean, I'm always open to debate and discussion. If you can replace my bad ideas with better ideas, then I'll do your ustad, right? But you do have to put in the effort and prove me where in my ideas there are cracks. But again, this is the whole point of me sharing my perspective. So I put my cards on the table, and now it's up to you as the Sangha to say, okay, well, look, he's done this bit wrong, or this bit's right. And that's how we move forward as a Panth, rather than getting stuck in dogmas. So if you want to learn a bit more about my ideas here, specifically regarding Azadism, which is technically a Sikhi-based linguistic framework approaching the topic of freedom from a Sikh perspective, as in my Sikh perspective, then read the Azadis manifesto at bungaazadi.com. I do not speak on behalf of all Sikhs when I talk about Azadism or anything like that, or even as the Bunga. But again, I'm sharing it as my personal perspective as a Sikh, and how I have interacted with Gurbani and developed and cultivated a Gurmat. And I put that up for testing and for stress testing. So if you can stress test it, great. But yeah, that's it. That's pretty much all I wanted to talk about today. If you've got any questions or any comments on this, let me know. If you've got any ideas for future topics to cover, or any other videos you'd like me to cover, etc., get in touch as well. And there's also a publication I'm releasing, a physical one. It's quite short. It's on the concept of the Khalsa being the Guru. It's from a series of Vichaars that we've done a little while ago on the Bunga page. You might see it pinned at the top of the Instagram. The Khalsa is the Guru. It's like an expansion of those Vichaars. I cleaned them up, and I also talk about the status of the Agar Takht as an authority or lack thereof. And also how does Sabbath Khalsa sort of like work conceptually? How do we build consensus as a Khalsa if we're all sovereigns or for self-autonomous sovereigns? So it goes into depth about those kind of things. Not too much depth. It's quite a short publication. It's like 37 pages or something like that. Yeah, like 34 pages. But it's a good primer on basically understanding what the status of the Khalsa is and what are the implications of that status. And then how could we then apply those implications to determine systems for building consensus? And in my opinion, we should probably be working towards a Mislamocracy. But again, you can purchase this soon. If not already, you might be able to purchase it, depending when this video goes out, at shop.bungaazadi.com. And those funds help support the Bunga, which we can raise for various projects we're looking to engage with. So yeah, if you want to support the Bunga as well, then subscribe as a paid subscriber on our Substack. You can become a patron of the Bunga, and that also helps us out massively too. Outside of that, simply just share, engage with the project, and let us know your thoughts. But thank you for listening. Why did you call Sa? Why did you keep